Amy to do that. Thank you, Amy. So for those of you who don't know me, hello, I'm Laura, and I am the head of sustainability and planet services with ThinkHouse, the youth marketing company. I'm the Ireland lead with Purpose Disruptors, and I'm leading the project Good Life 2030 Ireland with the wonderful ThinkHouse and Purpose Disruptors team. So on the call here hosting today, we have Lisa Merrick-Lawless, who's a co-founder of Purpose Disruptors, giving a little wave there. Got Kerry Jones, who's the project lead for Good Life 2030, and Amy Burton, who is the comms manager at Purpose Disruptors. So hello, everyone. You'll be hearing from all of us at different points. But before we start, the agenda today is going to be, we've got about 90 minutes together. We're here to hear about the Good Life 2030 Ireland Citizen Vision Report. So we're going to share lots of lovely insights from that and have time for a Q&A after that. We're going to begin, though, with a little introduction into the different collaborators on this project. And we're going to start with a little exercise to exercise our imagination muscles and get us into the energy for thinking about the future. And then at the very, very end, we'll have a little exercise to do together to just get us thinking about what next and our collaborative, I guess, ideas about the future of the industry. So as I said, we'd love to hear any questions that you have as we go through. There will be a little bit of a section for discussion after we present the insights. So first of all, just introductions into the collaborators on the project. I'm going to pass you over to Lisa to tell you a little bit about Purpose Disruptors.
Thanks, Laura. That's great. Lovely to be here and see you all. I'm especially loving all the very Irish sounding names. That gives me so much joy. So I'm Lisa. I'm one of the co-founders, along with Rob McFall and Jonathan Wise, who are also on the call, lurking in the background somewhere, but you can give a wave as well. We started Purpose Disruptors 5 years ago in 2019. Started in a pub, like all the best things do. And I guess we were people working in advertising and marketing. Between us, we've got sort of, well, too many years experience, but across sort of client side brands, but also advertising and media. And we were sort of wrestling with the question, you know, what do you do when you work in this industry and you're in a climate emergency, and the two don't seem to be natural bedfellows. And that causes a lot of tension for people. And so we set up a pub night, invited people to come along and discuss the sort of tension. I guess that has then developed over the last 5 years from a pub night into a fully fledged company with a wonderful kind of, 8 people in the UK, another 4 in Ireland, but a bigger community of about 5,000 people sort of supporting us. We've done all kinds of things, like be the only people in the advertising industry at COP 26 and 27. And I guess our vision really is about a sort of marketing, advertising, media industry transformed, in service of a thriving future. So what would actually happen if we could be playing a really positive role in society? And our mission is exactly that, to sort of catalyse the transition that the industry needs to go through. And we do, we held a really true belief, I think, that this industry has incredible superpowers, and really, if they were directed, in a positive way, can do incredible things in terms of shaping society and creating culture. So this is about sort of, the whole industry kind of shift. And in order to do that, we have 5 pillars of work. So the first one is community. So that's a really big part of what we do. It's how we started. We still run monthly pub nights that are free and anyone can come to. We run disruptor events online, which are also free, that anybody can come to. And bringing people together and convening has remained sort of at the heart of not only the company, but every project that we do, we're bringing people in. The second pillar is around leadership, and that really is about, ensuring that the leaders in our industry have the right skills in order to move us to where we need to get to in the next sort of chapter of our industry. And that's about sort of, training, coaching. We have lots of different things that help with that. A brilliant program called Reclaiming Agency, which is a sort of 6-month, leadership journey, but also lots of coaching of leaders and bringing them together. The third pillar is around measurement, and we launched a new methodology for the industry called advertised emissions, which is really about helping the industry understand the full responsibility that we have and holistically measuring our carbon footprint. So not just the operations, but also, the carbon emissions created from the things we sell in the work that we do. Fourth pillar is education, and that's Change the Brief Alliance, which Rob runs. John runs advertised emissions. And that's really about enabling people to gain the knowledge they need for their day-to-day jobs. So agencies, clients, across the board, making sure that they have the baseline knowledge needed across verticals and everything else in order to sort of move into this new world of sort of climate sustainability. And the final pillar is around creativity, which is what I kind of lead, along with Kerry, who you're going to hear from in a minute, who runs the projects on that. So that is all about reimagining the future of society and the industry's role in it through creative experiments. So enabling people to work on live briefs where they can create work where the client might, for instance, be the future or nature or something a bit different. So that's enough of me. Wanging on, I'm going to pass over to Laura, I think now. Back to you, Laura.
Yes, thank you, Lisa. So ThinkHouse then is a youth marketing company, and we've collaborated with Purpose Disruptors to create this project that we're all here to discuss. So ThinkHouse, for those of you who don't know us, is one of the world's leading independent agencies. We're a full service digital marketing company for progressive brands that care about people and planet. And we were founded in 2001. And our core specialty lies in helping brands, businesses, and organizations to be culturally relevant and to really drive cultural change at a national and international level. So we're full service as an agency with services in PR, events, social media, digital innovation, creative services, insight, strategy, sustainability consultancy. And our three main services that all of this comes under are called Transformation, Planet, and Fame. And we're really proud to be a B Corp certified company as well. So we got involved with Purpose Disruptors, I mean, back in the pub nights when we were able to come, but really initially through the Reclaiming Agency project that they do, and then getting involved in some of the very early on activity with the climate crisis summits that were hosted and the Great Reset. So we're really excited because this was made possible through a fund by the Irish government called the Creative Climate Action Fund by Creative Ireland. The Creative Ireland is a 5-year programme that connects people, creativity and well-being. And the Creative Climate Action Fund is funded by the Department of Tourism, Culture, Arts, Gaeltacht, Sport and Media in collaboration with the Department of the Environment, Climate and Communication. So the fund supports creative projects and artistic projects that build awareness around climate change and empower citizens to take meaningful action. So this is the first time the marketing and advertising industry has been funded to do something like this. So we're really excited. And I'm going to just post a link in the chat about that fund, just in case anyone is interested in finding out more. So yeah, we're here today to talk about the first phase of this project, which is our Citizen Vision Report, exploring what Irish citizens dream of in the future and how our industry can help. But I just wanted to start by saying thank you to everybody who's shown up today and everybody who's read the report. It's been really amazing to see the reaction so far. We've got, a reach of over 3 million in terms of PR. And we've been on, the Irish Times and RTE radio and News Talk. So it's been really, really amazing to kind of see the energy for a discussion like this within the industry. And I think we're at around just over 130 downloads of the report as well. So if anyone hasn't read the full report yet, I'll also pop a link into the chat to download that. And yeah, we also had a great discussion about the good life at the Ad Net Zero Summit that happened, the first one that happened in Ireland a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, it's been really positive, and I think we just want to take a moment for that energy and we're really grateful for it. So please stick around to the end of the session because we'd love to hear a little bit more from you, because we've been talking so much and we will be talking so much. So yeah. Before we delve into the insights from phase 1 of this project, I'm going to hand you back to Kerry now, actually, to help set the scene for the good life and give you a little bit of background into what brought us to here today.
Thanks, Laura, and hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. So we're going to start by just getting a bit more comfortable where we are before Laura takes us on an adventure through the Good Life Ireland Citizen Insights. So if I can get you just to give your shoulders a roll away from the ears, loosen up, maybe a bit of a roll of the neck. Seeing some nice adjustments in the yellow table room. And then just feeling your feet grounded against the floor. Maybe take your feet a little bit wider so the pads of your feet are a bit more comfortable, grounded, wherever that surface might be today. Trains, offices, bedrooms, perhaps outside if you're lucky enough. Okay. And then just closing down your eyes from here, taking a deep breath in through the nose, filling the lungs. And then exhale, sigh it out. I want your mind to travel to a time where you felt really good. That kind of warm, fuzzy goodness that fills you up like nectar. And if you've landed on that moment without adjusting it, what were you doing? Where were you? Who were you with? What could you see, hear? Spend a moment in that space. Okay. And keeping your eyes closed, can I have a show of hands who was in a shopping centre? A show of hands who was at work? Okay. Big fat zero there. A show of hands who travelled to a Zoom call? No. Anyone in nature? Okay, quite a few of you in nature. Anyone with someone they love, someone important to them? Yeah, pretty much all. I'm liking the emoji hand waves. Anyone doing something that fills them up? Gardening, dancing, cooking? Not either. Okay, you can open your eyes again now. So I guess the reason for doing this is it's quite simple, really. It's that reminder that when we travel to memories that make us feel good, it's not the image or the narrative or the story that is sold to us in popular culture, right? It's not places where we're consuming or living something more fast paced. It's actually really simple. It's being in nature or connecting with those we love or doing something that we love. And that's an exercise that we did when we first launched this project as a reminder that this can be simple, and when we listen to citizens, what they really want is far different to that narrative. So I'm quickly going to walk us through the origins of the Good Life project. So Laura's given you the backstory of how it started in Ireland, and then I'll hand back to Laura to walk you through the insights. So I'm just going to share my screen. Shout when you can see that. Okay, is that visible now? Great stuff. So how have we been doing this work in the UK? Myself, Lisa, and Amy have been working on this project. And it's been going for over 3 years now. And really, we started this project through this guiding question: how can we, as people in advertising, help create a thriving future for all? knowing that as people in the advertising industry, we're really architects of desire. We create and distribute messages that show up 10,000 times a day. And that's 10,000 suggestions of how someone's life might be better. So not that good life that we imagined at the beginning, but something much, much different. So our suggestions tend to orient towards a vision of more, a good life based on wealth, status, more experiences, material abundance. And that, of course, as we know, drives inequality, individualism, competitiveness, exploitation, and so on. The list goes on. There's also a clear climate link here. So if we're having a more high carbon centered lifestyle, that takes up a lot more carbon. So there's a growing conversation led by Jonathan and the team here in the UK, looking at the emissions associated with the adverts that we create and put out in the world. And for creative people, it's fair to say that we haven't been super imaginative about driving this transition forward. So the dominant image of culture when it comes to sustainability and green lifestyles is this image that you see on the screen now. So it's making sustainable products or a move towards more sustainable living feel quite cold and difficult to relate to. It doesn't feel tangible for a lot of people when they start to dream of what the future might look like. So we really need to create a culture of being more imaginative. Interestingly, there's a growing body of literature around this work. So researchers are calling this the imagination recession or the imagination crisis. So why is it that we're tinkering around the edges in incremental steps rather than imagining the grand possibilities of how we might change? Our survival really depends on this imagination, right? If we're to reimagine and rebuild everything, we have to start thinking big, beyond business as usual. And we're in a perfect storm here in the UK of media, politics, anxiety. It's causing our imagination to shrink when really we need to expand. And history shows us that we can imagine, and when we do, change happens at scale and speed. So the image on the left there in Fifth Avenue, New York, shows the street filled with horses and carts. And it would have been hard to imagine that only 13 years later, the same stretch of street would be filled with motor cars. So at Purpose Disruptors, we've been working on Good Life 2030 to cultivate that culture of imagination. We've actively designed and tested creative interventions in the field, shifting the output from research that you'll hear about today to creative campaigns that stretch the possibilities of thought. And here are some of those interventions. I'll just give you a snapshot today because I'm conscious of time, but really the citizens' insights research, asking citizens in the UK what they dream of, what they yearn for in the future, has been the roots of this project. So it's allowed us to create briefs that play back those visions of the future to real citizens of the UK and put them out in the world through our excellent media partnerships here at Purpose Disruptors. And then we're also embedding those citizens' insights back into businesses. So rethinking how agencies operate, stretching their collective imaginations through things like toolkits, industry workshops, our wonderful manifesto, which you'll get the chance to play with this afternoon. And then we also have a documentary, which is available on our website. So from one piece of research, we've been able to birth all of these interventions, which have really some stretched capabilities from what we've seen here in the UK. So we're very excited to see what seeds this project will sow in Ireland. I'm going to hand back to Laura now to share more on that.
Thank you, Kerry. I will share my screen now and we'll get started on what we've been up to here. So, oh yeah, these were a few little clips of can everyone see the screen okay? These were a few little clips from the media response to the insights so far. So I think we were all a bit blown away by some of these headlines. Less is more for living a good life, and featuring in the Irish Times was a real highlight. So yeah, if you haven't listened back, you can listen back to some of the links. They're all up on our social media. So we'll get started. Ireland Citizen Visions of a Good Life in 2030. And who better to start with than our very own Mary Robinson, who spoke at a great event by DCU recently, talking about how we need to get excited about the future that's just around the corner. We need a more imagined future. We need to be able to talk more about where we want to be. So this 2024 report marks the first time that we've collated insights from citizens in Ireland, all around their idea of a good life. And the first Citizen Vision report was published in the UK in 2021. And I think what we've learned over the years is that these insights actually end up being a really big part of the project, and one of the vital components that end up really inspiring people and really getting people to think about the possibilities that are in front of us. So in terms of the Irish context, then, there's a lot that we covered in the report around, how people currently think about climate, in terms of, the majority of people in Ireland believe that it's happening, are worried about it. But to segue into our insights today, I just wanted to highlight one really lovely stat that was revealed in the Environmental Protection Agency's work, Climate in the Irish Mind, that said 74% of people in Ireland say that actually taking action to reduce climate change will improve Ireland's quality of life. So there's this thread between better lifestyles and action on climate that provides really a compelling argument for narratives that really go beyond the sustainability first message and really get to the more human messages, to the heart of what people really desire in life. So what we did then to uncover Ireland's citizen visions was we did both qual and quantitative research. And we ran, first of all, for qual, a 3-day in-depth exploration journey for 25 citizens. This happened in December 2023, and we used Zoom, an online research platform called Recollective, and WhatsApp. And people responded to questions with audio, video, writing, and imagery to share their views and ideas. And then our quantitative research, we worked with Ipsos BNA with their online barometer in December, again in 2023, to research a nationally representative figure of 1,030 adults aged 16 plus in Ireland. And the questions that we asked these people was really to supplement the qualitative interviews and really explore what people feel like a good life is, what their barriers to achieving a good life is, and attitudes towards the advertising industry and supporting this. So the process in terms of the conversations that we had was really just not about opinions, but about visions of the future. So there were really carefully crafted exercises that asked people to imagine 2030. So it's a time frame that's far enough to allow for some creative leaps, but close enough to allow for detail. Also, importantly, 2030 is the time when we're all due to have our greenhouse gas emissions as a global community. So we asked people about their values to paint a picture of their lives as they currently stand and reflect on what really matters to them. We asked people how they saw the world today, how they feel about the world around them. We asked people about 2030, how they wanted to see themselves, their communities and wider society, and what that good life would look like in 6 years' time. And influences then finally on their lives and on their future life through the lens of advertising. So yeah, we didn't ask about sustainability or climate head on, but of course it came up. So what did we find? So overall, there was this real desire for interconnectedness. That was the main thing. And this was really, really echoed in the UK research as well. Really loudly, really clearly, nothing matters more than feeling connected. But within this overarching theme, there were 3 consistent and distinct threads: a desire for more connection to self, more connection to others, and more connection to nature. So others being family, friends, and community; nature, talking about place, talking about health, talking about environments. So we're going to delve into each of these 3 spheres one by one. So in terms of connection to self, first of all, in 2030, citizens really yearn to be more connected to themselves. And this wasn't, I just don't want anybody else around me. It was around moving away from hustle culture and this fast-paced, high-pressure lifestyle, feeling busy all the time, to really want to embrace a slower pace of life, of rest, of presence, a life of less precarity, with greater opportunities for self-sufficiency. So citizens really wanted a better work-life balance. They talked about, a 4-day work week and flexible working arrangements, and just overall improving their quality of life, and the simple things in life. So the first big shift from the present day to 2030 that they spoke about was the sense of wanting to go from rushing around the place all the time to rest, to wanting a calm life, a good life being feeling content in the day-to-day, having balance between work, friends, family, and just to enjoy living as opposed to rushing around all of the time. So what we have on these slides is some sound bites from citizens, what they said, and then some of the imagery that they provided to illustrate their visions for 2030. So the second big shift under connection to self was from distraction to presence. So citizens were really clear on this need to assert more control over their attention in order to be really intentional around how they spend their time. So this manifested in discussions around technology and social media, and being really conscious of their mindset and how that impacts on their health. And this also was reflected in the desire for less, screen time and more in real life connection and displays of empathy towards one another. So people talking about, big tech not driving the way we think so much, and protecting your health and your mind, that we need to be more invested in that, being present in the moment. And then the third shift for connection to self was to go from, feeling shaky foundations in the present to, in the future, wanting a real desire for secure freedom. So that was reflective of a sense of insecurity in the present. So obviously issues like housing, health, war, and environment all came up in conversation. And there was a real desire to feel safe, to feel stable, especially from the perspectives of housing and health. You can see some of the imagery there. And this kind of sense of physical security was also aligned with the desire to kind of be mentally free of pain and trauma of the current reality. So a lot of people were obviously, in December 23, witnessing war, witnessing riots in Dublin. So there was this sense of, I don't want to have to live through this time where I'm really pained by what's going on in the world, and I need to be secure in that idea. So people talking about financial freedom there, to have a roof over their head, to live in peace and to live in harmony, and that was a good life. So how can we support these visions? So under each shift, there are invitations then to us as communicators who have the ability to help with these visions, to make them feel more attainable in the day-to-day. So citizens are vocal about removing obstacles like stress, overwork, insecurity. Tangible, positive alternatives feel a little bit foggier. So there's more clarity here in terms of what people want less of, and less clarity around people what they want more of. So there's an important role for us to play in helping add color and specificity to the life worth dreaming. So we can really help to prompt citizens to remember to just take time for themselves. So in terms of that desire for rest, we can show what a restful and slower pace of life can look like without material leisure cues, because oftentimes, that idea of rest can come alongside, poolside tropes with cocktails, and these kind of visions don't actually incorporate the day-to-day desire for rest and to have a sustainable everyday life that isn't costly or extreme. So there's an opportunity to build a reference library for that. And then in terms of presence, the invitation is to offer citizens a way to reclaim their attention in new ways. People want to be able to manage their time and their attention. They find themselves in the grips of social media. And so there's an opportunity to invite people to switch off in new ways and highlight the benefits that this can have on a day-to-day basis, and to build narratives that, I guess, reject escapism of screen life and normalize moments of really intentional connection with other people. And then finally, in secure freedom, the desire for firm foundations This can be reflected in not just in, an owned property, but in the day-to-day habitat that we all take part in. So to create a stable sense of place by deepening the understanding of home and security beyond property, and to play with tangible visual and written narratives for aspirational visions of cheaper, self-sufficient living that's also sustainable. And they can be connected to local ecosystems, not just bricks and mortar. So these are suggestions for stories, for the sake of the story, for the sake of the good life, rather than, stories that can be used to sell cars, to sell beer. So I guess the invitation is for all of us to reflect on these stories that may be possible. Do they feel possible? Is it within our gift to be able to tell these stories in new ways? So I'm going to move on to our second big desire for connection to others. And in this shift, citizens are telling us they want to focus on the value of relationships with friends, family, local communities, and wider society. And when people spoke about this, they spoke about supporting people across cultures, strengthening intergenerational ties, strengthening cultural and social cohesion. And it really was around conviviality in addition to peace and resilience, and social integration. So the first big shift from now to 2030 is from happy homes to connected communities. Citizens want to build on the existing quality roles and routines and rituals that they currently share with friends and family. But there's a desire to build even stronger support networks and to be more active with other people in community. So people spoke about community hubs, that we can interact with each other and eat together, and just spend time together without it having to be, something that is an economic, I guess, activity, to just have this sense of neighborliness, and to be able to actually see friends and family and want to spend time with them. So that came out really strongly. You can see some of the imagery there on the right, with people looking at community spaces, and togetherness. Then the second big shift for 2030 was the sense of a shift from broken ties to bound together. And again, this was really a really emotional one that came up when we spoke to people. They really wanted to see the shift away from the sense of unrest and cultural polarization to a real depth of frequency of connection with each other, and strength across not only local communities but global communities, a real sense of global citizenship coming out there, not just safety but resilience being spoken about, and integration. So you can see all the lovely symbols for world peace it coming through in the imagery, but also diversity and this idea of less social upheaval being a big desire for Irish citizens. And then finally in this section, the desire to extend the understanding of well-being beyond the individual. So this sense that a good life for me is not just well-being for me, but it's well-being for the many. I can't have a good life unless the people around me, the people close to me, and people even across the world are having a good life. So the well-being and the health of other people is something that is intrinsic to my own individual good life. And that was something, that kind of empathy piece was something that was actually very surprising. It came out really strongly in terms of not just having strengthened community ties, but well-being across communities, and a sense of responsibility really attached to this, that people wanted to be active participants in making sure that the people around them felt a sense of well-being, and that they were able to support other people in living a good life too. There was a sense that I'm not living a good life if I'm not supporting others to also live a good life, which is a really lovely sentiment that came out. You can see in the last quote there, I do a lot of good things for myself, but I'd like to be able to help others too. And that was the sense of, if I'm really, truly living my good life, I'm contributing and focusing on the well-being of everyone. So how can we support these visions then? These are our suggestions. So there's a real desire to connect to others, And although there's this dream of really building community, you saw a lot of that imagery being quite stock imagery. You saw the kind of world peace and the peace symbols. There's definitely an opportunity to create visual and material that can represent this positive experience that people are searching for, in a really realistic way. So from the perspective of connected communities, how can we make compelling, broader networks of mutual care and stability beyond just close friends and family come to life? So I'm thinking about, the spaces that we share regularly, like supermarkets, cinemas, sports grounds. All of these places can be conduits for togetherness. So we can show how these ecosystems are easy to access. We access them every day, and we have the potential to guide communities in new directions in these spaces to provide care and enrich day-to-day living. So we can reveal how these simple decisions and opportunities to bring people together can strengthen communities. And then in terms of the desire to be more bound together, we can dismantle the illusion of separateness here. There is an illusion that we are separate, and really show examples of how, local actions have an impact on broader communities across the world, and how we are all connected. This sense of global citizenship, and highlight the ways that people can support others in different communities, it just in day-to-day decisions. And that involves revealing the connections that exist in systems, and on a deeper level, really encouraging people to connect with their lives beyond the self, practice empathy and compassion collectively in new ways. And then finally, well-being for many, showing what close-knit can really look like beyond the traditional family arrangement, particularly new models of intergenerational care. So citizens are really, really keen to support one another, to be healthy and to be happy, but the visuals and narratives to make caregiving appealing beyond duty and beyond just superficial actions are quite lacking. So there's an opportunity to give people simple, specific ways that we can support one another, with an inclusive mindset. So again, these are suggestions of stories of how we can support people to live the lives they want to be living, and not use these to kind of sell things, but to really kind of feel like another world is possible, and remind people, that their attention is important. Where we show our attention to is really important. And finally, I'll move on to our last big connection theme is connection to nature. And here it came up nearly across every single conversation around wanting to be reoriented towards the natural world in new ways. So a real desire to connect more deeply with the natural world and enjoy the benefits of a healthy environment. So there was a real sense of the articulation of the connection between our health and the health of the living world around us, to see nature flourish, to help protect and conserve the natural world, and to be just generally more embedded in the outdoors in our day-to-day. So there's a real longing here to shift away from this sense of material wealth as a measure of success to really finding joy and fulfillment in simple, non-material aspects of life. So the first big shift that came up was this idea of nature failing to nature flourishing. So there was a real awareness of how bad things are in terms of biodiversity and nature loss. And people spoke about how a good life was living in a healthy environment, and how actually it's common sense when you think about it. You have a good life when the planet is better, we're healthy, we're part of this story. And people just saying, a good life for me is just to be able to walk in nature, just to be able to breathe fresh air, to have healthy oceans, to have no pollution. So this is a very basic level. They want to be able to appreciate, we all want to be able to appreciate the beauty of nature without that worry that it will be lost. So this came across universally, to appreciate the basic benefits that result from living among healthy living systems. Secondly, the big shift in terms of the desire for connection to nature, to go from being harmful bystanders to healthy participants. So alongside this awareness of nature failing, there was a expressed concern about the harm currently being done to nature. So this link between nature is failing because of how we are treating nature. And citizens really recognize that link, and how and articulate a desire to be active participants in turning this around. So people really saw their role in transforming healthy ecosystems, and actually seeing that role as like a healthy participant as one that would also help them become more connected to the natural environment. So a lot of people actually speaking about growing their own produce, wanting to grow organic fruits. Again, that sense of needing to contribute that came up in that connection to others piece, wanting to be an active participant, wanting to be able to be part of a transformation. And again, a little bit of a limitation in terms of the imagery that was provided. You do still see these kind of hands with soil getting in them, a lovely imagery of healthy fruit produce there. But the connection between the health of nature and our mood and everything, it was incredible to see that being articulated. And then finally, the last big shift for connection to nature is from buying indoors to being outdoors. So this is where people spoke about a longing to be more embedded in the outdoors, to see that more quality experiences in the day-to-day are embedded in nature. And they want to be able to appreciate the beauty in everyday life, doing more with less, and breaking away from the constraints of consumer culture. You see one of our participants here talking about life being too short to go to the local shopping mall. I don't want to do that. I want to spend my life enjoying simple things. Somebody else talking about meditation and cold seawater, dancing, things that were reflected in the earlier exercise when Kerry asked us to imagine a good day. So this was reflected across all age groups, and the idea that we can do more and enjoy more with less felt really, really possible to people. Again, this was not prompted. These were things that people came up with all on their own. So how can we support these visions? So obviously we're living in a time with increasingly grueling environmental news. It's heartbreaking when you see kind of the latest science being spoken about. And so we're all noticeably alarmed actually by the current state of the natural world. And citizens are really quick to express the desire for a more positive relationship with nature into the future. So I think it's critical now that we can help people realize that positive alternative today. So it's not just, one where the worst impacts of climate breakdown have been addressed, but where human relations with nature have been harmoniously transformed. So in terms of nature flourishing, we can offer citizens more opportunities to cultivate awe at the natural world. So rather than get caught up and stuck in the terrible news and the way that nature is failing, how can we provide clear written visual direction for what regenerative landscapes can generate, and broaden people's imagination with imagery of people enjoying nature as it flourishes, create an image of the future that people want. Then in terms of healthy participants, in today's world where nature really requires help, how can we help people activate that desire to be an agent of positive change? So despite the large scale of the crisis, people really want to experience that interrelationship between plants and animal species more deeply, so we can help people maybe become protagonists in local environmental action stories and show people as positive contributors, benefiting and healing our own ecosystems. And then finally, being outdoors, inviting citizens to be more confident in knowing what doing more outdoors with less leads to. It leads to that greater well-being for people and the environment. And so there's a clear, deep appreciation for the outdoors and an interest in it. So we need to show that it's not difficult to actually build up that supportive relationship and orient ourselves more towards nature by taking simple steps into deciding how we want to spend our time more intentionally. And again, these are stories that we want to create and that citizens are inviting us to create for the sake of living a good life. So hopefully that all feels possible. So in summary, here are the shifts that people expressed a desire for in 2030. A stronger sense of interconnectedness with self, others, and nature. The desire to slow down, the desire to strengthen community bonds, to create a mutually beneficial relationship with the environment. And notably, these are not lifestyles that are reliant on high carbon or high emission activities. The things that citizens say that they want are really highly compatible with lower carbon lifestyles, or with lifestyles that enrich the natural world and the environment and our own lives. So that takes me into section 2, with a beautiful quote from Christiana Figueres: most, if not all, measures to address climate change actually improve quality of life. So we're running a little bit tight on time, but I'm going to fly through this section because this section is all about how our quantitative research supported the qualitative conversations that we just looked through. And as people spoke about their good life, there was a real sense of gratefulness, actually, for the life that we had in the present. So people had a deep sense of gratitude and appreciation for the positive things in their lives today. And this invitation to reflect on the future made citizens reflect on the values they live their life by in the present, reinforcing, I guess, the importance of recognizing and prioritizing the things that we want now. And these priorities really laid the foundation for future visions. So you see people here talking about the research helping to refocus their minds. So we asked people in the quant, you know, what gives you the greatest sense of well-being or contentment today? And that was, you know, number one, quality time with the people I care about, that connection to others, you know, 55% saying that. Secondly, being active, being fit, being healthy, and drawing that link with the natural world there, 26% outdoors, enjoying nature. And then connection to self, 29% saying it's taking time for myself is when I feel the greatest sense of well-being and contentment. And the lowest endorsement there, being busy all the time, being spontaneous, and working and developing my career. So there were a few nuances in some of this research. So we had people from women actually were more likely to select quality time with the people they care about. Men and under 34-year-olds are more likely to talk about work and developing career, and over 55-year-old age range were more likely to select helping other people as the greatest source of well-being and contentment. So there were some really interesting nuances there. But ultimately, the big takeaway from this was that the good life felt attainable to people. So despite acknowledgement across the board of difficulties and challenges that exist in the world, there was evidence that there was high feasibility of people wanting to be able to achieve their good life. So there's lots of things that people would change, but, you know, somebody saying the things I want are not super hard to achieve. But we did also ask them what felt like a barrier, what feels like it's in the way of you living a good life. And 42% said not having the time or motivation to think beyond today or redirect my life. And that was really higher among the ABC1 cohort. And it was really interesting because actually then when we spoke to people, when people were given the time to reflect and consider their own vision for the future, they were more likely to take positive actions. So really what we found was that the time to reflect is transformational. So participants who were brought through the qualitative process illustrated the transformative power of rethinking the good life. So nearly half of the people who participated in the research made changes to their life. There was one person who's, the quote is up on screen there, who put their house up for sale, thinking about, you know, where they wanted their kids to be able to play. And behavioral changes ranged from there to people being more aware of their devices and wanting to put them away when they were with friends and family, people talking about wanting to join their local tidy towns as an action, and minimizing environmental impact with purchasing decisions. And people who didn't make changes actually were already talking about making changes in their life, or expressed a desire to feel like they wanted to maintain the things that really mattered to them in the present. But there was an imagination challenge, as Kerry referred to earlier, with the kind of stock sustainability imagery. 33% of Irish citizens in our quant expressed discomfort or fear in terms of living a good life. And this was around the idea that, you know, maybe chasing a good life might not lead to something better. And actually, you know, what we found was that while citizens were really clear on what they don't want, we struggled to hear more around what people do want. So that imagination challenge was compounded by the day-to-day stresses and the day-to-day experiences that people were living. And it was reflected not only in descriptions, but visually. So the writing and audio, were generally much richer, and people were more easily able to describe some positive things than they were able to show them. So while, I wasn't able to share some of the personal imagery that was shared, we did have lots of lovely selfies with family members. But the visual content beyond that was very abstract. So the online source material that we're pulling from is limiting, essentially. And we did some of the creative directors in ThinkHouse did some AI tests searching terms like, good life in the future and good life in 2030. And you can see there on the right, some skyscrapers with lots of plants and greenery, but less imagery to do with what we heard in citizen visions, no sense of community or people together. I don't think places like, Cavan are going to look like this on the right in 2030. So there's definitely a role and a question around, can marketing and advertising help? So when we asked people about the role of advertising and the attitudes towards marketing and advertising, the findings really reveal an opportunity for us to support these mindset shifts. So at the moment, people are quite divided in their views of the industry, but there is an opportunity that is super, super clear. So the biggest stat that came back to us was 77% of adults in Ireland agree that the advertising industry should help people lead healthy and sustainable lives. But then when people were prompted to think about the adverts and marketing that's seen on billboards, heard on the radio, seen online or social media, on TV today, people were really polarized in their views. So on the one hand, we had 45% say the world would be better off without advertising in its current form, yet 32% neither agreed or disagreed. People didn't know if it was useful or helpful. And then again, similar takeaways here in terms of 42% saying that the advertising industry promotes an image of life that's harmful for people in Ireland, with a huge amount of people unsure, neither agreeing or disagreeing, 39%. And then in terms of the influence that advertising has, people are saying, 45% are saying the adverts I see don't influence my idea of a good life. They're not aligned. They're not aligned with the good life they imagine for myself. But 26% say they do. And there's a generational nuance here. So younger people were more likely to see themselves as influenced by advertising. And younger citizens under the age of 34 are more likely than average to agree that the advertising they see influences their idea of what a good life is. So this is all really fascinating. And there really is an opportunity here in terms of advertising to help promote the good lives that citizens have expressed a desire for. And in our qualitative interviews, we really were able to dig into the information behind these stats. So why did people feel like advertising was misaligned? So from a negative perspective, people felt like advertising was intrusive to their lives. But in terms of the opportunity, people really recognized the power that advertising has on culture and on society. This is not something that's a secret anymore. People can understand how it works. So people talking about, actually, if we are more thoughtful and responsible with approaches, we can really harness the potential benefits here. And advertising can be more relevant to people's lives with useful information, rather than trying to sway people that material goods will help improve the quality of their lives. And a real understanding, actually, beyond the idea of behavior change, this real understanding that advertising can influence mindset shifts. And a mindset shift is the most powerful shift that citizens can undergo, and it's driven by aligning people with their values. So for instance, the man who put his house up for sale, that was driven because he wanted to, give his kids a good life, was driven through his values as a parent. And this decision was reflective of how citizens recognize that the advertising industry has the skills to empower and inspire these transformative mindset shifts that can happen in an instant. So there's a quote here from Donella Meadows around this. People who manage to intervene in systems at the level of the paradigm shift have hit a leverage point that can totally transform. And a single individual can change their mindset in a millisecond. All it takes is a click in the mind, a falling of scales from the eyes, a new way of seeing. And then really positively, the marketing and advertising industry in Ireland itself believes that it can do better. So 57% of people don't agree that the advertising is currently doing all it can to create a sustainable world, and 90% agree that Ireland's advertising industry has an important role to play. And this was research done by IAPI in support of this project in February of 2024. So that nearly brings us to the end of this whirlwind journey of citizen visions. And what next? What can we do next? So we have some provocations at the end of the report that are just questions, and they're questions that are aimed for people working in the marketing, media, and advertising industry. How might we start to work in service to citizen visions? What contribution could you make to a new narrative around connection? What would it take to create a space to reflect on a good life in 2030 with the people that you work with? And then for people who maybe are outside the industry, working in sustainability or working in academia, how might citizen vision support you in making your comms more compelling or relevant? Or how could longer term future visions accelerate or complement the short term changes that are required of us? And so just to finish up, these findings, they illustrate what people in Ireland really believe they want from their life: more connection to themselves, to others, and to nature now and into the future. And from the perspective of culture and comms, this process reveals the power of redirected attention and redirected perspective, because when people were invited to explore or see the world differently, they began to think and behave differently. So there's a really, really exciting opportunity for us to build bridges that support the possibility of citizen visions for a good life on the road that we're paving to 2030 and beyond. And as problems of the world intensify, we find ourselves in a place where creatives and communicators play an even more critical role, because it's in our gift to build sustainable visions of a good life and to put them into culture. This is about civic imaginations and supporting citizens to dream better and then realize it. So phase 2 of the project will explore this more. What would it look like if we actually, put the weight of our industry behind a coordinated response to these visions and use our creativity in service to life on Earth? Because the future is not some place we're going, but a place we are creating. The paths are not to be discovered, but made, and the activity of making the future changes both the maker and the destination. So I'm going to stop sharing there and open it up to Q&A in case there are any questions coming through on the chat.
Yeah, we've had a few come through on the chat. Thank you so much, Laura. That was awesome. And I know there's so much in there and so much detail and so much richness, but such powerful insights and so much that people can take away from that. Super inspiring. So thank you so much. So yeah, we've had a few come in, and also just people in the room, people in the Zoom room, please drop any questions that you have in the chat, and we will make sure we ask those, and so make sure your question gets answered. Feel free also to kind of put your hand up as well. But yeah, if you could drop it in the chat, that would be super. So kicking off, so we've had a few come through. So the first question is for you, Laura, and it is from Roisin Markham. So she's interested to know, how did you align the framing of research to the Irish government wellbeing indicators? Is that something that you did?
We didn't look at the wellbeing indicators for this framing. We've really framed it based on how citizen research has been done for the Good Life project in the past in the UK. So we wanted to make it unique. We wanted to make it something that people could really think beyond their day-to-day and to focus it in on citizens' lives. So the wellbeing indicators may be something that we can align it to later on, but it's not something that we considered in terms of the upfront work.
Thank you. So there's a question from Sarah Carroll. How did you discount for people giving the answers they thought might make them look good, or giving the answers they thought they should give? I don't know if there was any way in the sort of research process to, yeah.
Well, actually, it was very fun. Everyone was very, very honest with us. There was a lot of people who, spoke openly about, saying, I care about the environment, I care about social justice, but actually my family is the most important thing to me. So there were very honest, I guess, articulations of what rationale as to why people gave the answers that they did. And a few people saying, I find this really hard. I find this really hard to think about the future. And that definitely came out. But of course, yeah, we can only take people at face value of what they decide to respond. I think the way in which we did the research really encouraged people to be honest, because they were online by themselves. So they weren't sharing it in an open forum with other people. They were responding with private audio clips directly to the researchers. So it really gave people space, and over a number of days also helped, because people were able to come back and reflect again and kind of say, well, I had another thought actually on this. So that really helped people be as authentic as possible over the course of the research.
Fab. Thanks, Laura. So another wonderful question. How is the industry holding itself to account to do better? And that's something both you and I think Lisa could also answer to, but I'll pass to you first, Laura.
Well, I think I mentioned at the very beginning, there is a big program that most of the agencies in Ireland have signed up to called Ad Net Zero, and some of this work would fit under Action 5 under that work. So the industry is talking a lot about sustainability at the moment, and there are some great initiatives and kind of new case studies being shared across all these pillars. So there's, the first big one is all around, getting your own house in order and looking at how we produce ads and put ads out in better ways. But I think, the focus of our work, and as was mentioned in the introduction, is about actually the cultural impact that we have as an industry, and taking responsibility for the work that goes out into the world is something that conversations are building around. So I think that's where there's some really exciting, I guess, reimagining of the industry happening. But there's a lot going on globally around the world in terms of, new certifications around greenwash. It's not just the industry itself. We need policymakers to also encourage us to take, more radical leaps forward in terms of, making our climate action plans work from the perspective of our industry as well. So there's lots going on there. And I think the message that I would have, or the reflection I have on it, is that we need radical action on all angles, not just within the industry, but outside of the industry as well. But Lisa, you probably have lots to add there.
No, I think that's really right. I think yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting question, isn't it? Holding itself account to do better. I would say I have really mixed views on that at the moment as to whether it is properly holding itself to account, actually. And I think in some ways it is, and the kind of, introductory steps that you're talking about, sort of, Laura, with Ad Net Zero and things, are a starting place for sure, and it's important that people kind of make a start. But I think the level of change needed, like you've also said, is far, far, greater than those sort of, kind of steps towards something different. And really, I think it makes me think, about what you were talking about in terms of Donella Meadows and systems change and mindset shift. It requires a complete paradigm shift in terms of what the industry is set up to do. And that requires people, really, as individuals. I don't really believe like the industry exists. Like, I think, having done this for 5 years now, we talk about the industry. I don't see that many people in it talk about it as the industry. And so what I do see is some really, radical change coming from the people who are wanting to be, the front runners, the leaders in this, people who are really willing to embrace the level of change needed, really willing to upskill in terms of both their knowledge and also the way they look at the world in order to lead the change that's needed. And so, yeah, I think what we need is a lot more leaders in this space, you know, willing to kind of do that in order to kind of help shift the industry, would be my thought.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, agreed with all your points and Laura's. Very, very useful thoughts there. So I've got another question from Chris McNabb. So how can we juggle the desire for price in inflationary times in advertising with the need for sustainable messages? Can they work together, or does one have to cancel out the other in messaging hierarchy? It's quite a technical question. I don't know if anyone wants to sort of put their hands up to answer it. Happy to repeat that if helpful as well.
Well, I mean, I think there's been research done around, you know, just even from a political perspective, that we need to align sustainable living across the board. So it cannot be one thing or another thing. You know, sustainability has to be ingrained in everything that we do. You know, this is everything everywhere all at once energy. And, you know, while there are short-term changes and pressures, this needs to be central to everything that we do. And I guess, you know, the idea is that, you know, if we have the creative skills to have gotten us this far, you know, we should have the creative skills to be able to impact on that challenge too. That would be my response.
Thanks, Laura. So I've seen Tim's just drop a question in the chat, which I'll read live. So how do you get the current leaders to start thinking about this, or do you need new leaders to rise to the surface? Lisa, I might come to you for that one.
Yeah, that is such a good question. That's $1 million question, I think, Tim. Actually, can people really step into this if they've built their career on an old model that is now kind of obsolete? That takes real bravery, actually, and real open-mindedness and real imagination. You know, and we do definitely work, you know, with leaders across the industry, as you do, Laura, you know, who are doing this for lots of different reasons, actually. You know, you're sitting meetings with people, you know, who are having a sort of existential crisis at home because their kids are sort of saying to them, you know, what are you doing about this? And that's enabling people to step up in a very human and different way. But I do think as well, and a lot of the work, you know, we do does focus also on emerging leaders. You know, there is a new generation coming through, you know, who have grown up with this and care passionately about it. And, you know, honestly, our industry is so young anyway. You know, I think 70% of people are under 30. So, you know, I mean, let's not get into the ageism of that, but just in terms of sort of new generations of leaders coming through, it's quite fast moving. And so it's really important that we're also, you know, making sure that we spend time with the leaders who are coming through, so when they step into leadership roles, this is just part of who they are and what they do. Yeah, Laura, I don't know if you've got any other thoughts on that.
I would agree with that, but I think it's I love the idea of leaderful action, that like it is not just, you know, the few who take action on this. It is everybody's role to be a leader in this space. So I know that kind of sounds a bit, you know, maybe cliche, but it's true, because, you know, at every single point in the journey, there are decisions that are made, and every decision is really important. But I do think in terms of inspiring people, there is a responsibility on existing leaders to do the work and to ask the right questions of themselves, and whether the leadership qualities they are existing are fit for the future that we all need to be creating. And, you know, where there is a sense of, you know, uncertainty, you know, that maybe that's an invitation to delve into this space a little bit more.
Yeah, I love what Jane's just added to that as well, which is, I don't think you're a relevant leader unless you're asking these questions. Would completely agree with that.
Yeah, very well put, Jane.
There's just another question I'd quite like to ask from Pat Cassidy, who's asking, should we stop using the word sustainability and start using a word with a more positive connotation? Yeah, it'd be great to hear both of your thoughts on that as well.
I'm reminded of a conversation at the Ad Net Zero event the other day where Colette Henry from Droga 5 was talking about we need to make sustainability more human. And I think that is true, because there is a sense that people get overwhelmed when we talk about climate, and climate is, you know, from that Christina Figueres quote, you know, it is about living better lives for everybody. I think there are still, you know, there is still a role for the term in terms of directing people in the right way, and for us to be able to talk about, you know, having shortcuts in just our communication to be able to align on what we're talking about. But there is definitely a lot more creative ways that we can bring about the lives that citizens want to be living.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly what we were circling around when we first launched the Good Life 2030 project, was kind of how do you find language to define, you know, values, human values, and a way of living, as opposed to something which has, unfortunately, over time, sustainability has become more about sort of tracking and more about ESG, and it's, you know, been around for decades. And so it's really tricky, because you're right, Laura, you also still, you know, every agency should have a sustainability director, and it's really important that these people are in role. And also, like, how do we find the language to describe what we're trying to do, which doesn't put it in a silo? So the trouble with that, you know, what we've seen over the last 2 years in particular, is you name it sustainability, you get a sustainability director, and then you're like, tick, we're done there. No, you're not done that. Sustainability and, you know, thriving future and evolving your business, you know, to be future proof, you know, goes through the entire business. It's everyone's job. And so I think that's the challenge a little bit with that language. I don't have the answer to that, but I do have a very live kind of question around it as well.
Thank you both. So I think we'll wrap it there for questions. So we were going to do a couple of other exercises, but actually we've sort of gone over time a little bit. So the one thing that we'd love you to do, everyone who's sort of left on the call, so we've just got a couple of things. So we'd just love to ask you a couple of questions actually on like how this this might have sort of changed your your thinking. So I will just quickly pop the questions into the chat. So if you could just literally give a thumbs up if this statement resonates with you, and then I'll pop another one in the chat as well, and then I'll hand over to Laura to close. So the first question is, I've developed a deeper understanding of the role the marketing, advertising and media industry plays in creating new stories that can shift people towards more sustainable living. And then the second question is this one, which is, I feel increased confidence and motivation to use my work to explore new visions of a good life. So yeah, again, if you feel that resonates with you and you agree, then please do, give it a thumbs up for this incredibly robust research that we're conducting in the chat forum of this Zoom call.
Thank you. Yeah, we will be doing a big report at the end of this project, so it's just really helpful to have these signals as we go forward. So the final exercise we were going to do with you, but I'm still going to put a link in the chat, because if people, you know, have the energy now when we go offline, we'd love you to play around with it. And it's a manifesto on our Good Life website. So I'm just going to put the link in the chat here. And if you feel like exploring that, please do. It was launched with the Good Life Toolkit last year, I think it was, Amy, to help people to, I guess, you know, have these structures to reflect with. And this is a collective manifesto that we can all contribute towards to help bring a vision for a different kind of industry into life. So, you know, while we all have our personal visions for 2030, what is our vision for the marketing and advertising industry. So we'd love you to add your voice. If you're willing to do that, you can just open the link and you can see that people have interacted with it already. And you can edit and add your thoughts for each section. So it's quite dynamic, and at the moment, the most popular responses are there, but feel free to write whatever you feel like. And again, it's not compulsory, but something that we'd love you to do if you felt compelled to. So thanks everyone for your time. The other link I'm going to put in the chat is a link to our Instagram account, which is growing by the day, but it's new. So we would appreciate any followers, because that is where we'll be sharing updates. We've got lovely audio clips of our citizens explaining their visions on the page. So that would be, they're actually lovely to just listen to. And as I said at the start, this is the first phase. So there is going to be more news coming out and more events and invitations for people in the industry if you feel like getting involved. So I'll pop a little email address in there where you can reach us if you would like to express a desire to get involved more. But thank you so much for all of your time, and download the report, share it, and keep dreaming about the good life. Yeah, really appreciate it. So thank you. That's all for now.